yeah, it is Wednesday. It's More Good News Wednesday, and I'm here with one of my best friends in the world, Mikey Diamond, a dose of Diamond Life Fuel. How you doing, Mikey?
I'm good, mate. How was New York?
New York, Chicago was incredible. I got to meet legends like Mike Tyson, Chris Gardner from Pursuit of Happiness, Lou Weisbach of Halo, Teddy Greenstein from the Tribune, just to name a few. It was the Legends Day. Badu was there. I can't, you know what? Sometimes I pinch myself. That's all I got to say. What a great trip. And I got to move my daughter into New York. She's living in the East Village. So shout out to Marissa. But enough about me. Let's talk about our guest, Luke Pardue. He is the economist at Gusto or Gusto, either way. You say Gusto, I say Gusto. Which way do you say it? What do you say, Luke? Which way do you say it?
I say Gusto. Thanks for having
me. A lot
of
Gusto.
Yeah, we do work with Gusto.
Well, Gusto, and you guys just came out with a new report, which I'm super interested in, obviously, in my place, as we have Gusto Pandemic Entrepreneurs Data Report. And I'd love to, you guys have surveyed so many different small and medium-sized businesses. What are some of the things that the report gave us that you were surprised about, and why is it so valuable to small and medium-sized businesses?
Sure. So again, thank you for having me. I'm Luke Pardue, an economist at Gusto. I think it's probably a little helpful just for me to outline what Gusto is, what we do, first of all.
Besides how to pronounce it correctly, unlike
yeah, exactly. That's step one.
I'm so ready for Portugal. I'm like, Gusto.
Yeah. But Gusto is a small business payroll and benefits platform for small business owners. So we help owners onboard, pay, insure, and provide benefits for their team, sort of every step of the way. When we say small businesses, we really mean the smallest of the small, 10 to 20 employees, or even smaller, who don't have an HR department to handle all of these needs. And so, beyond just running payroll, the day-to-day, making sure taxes are being withheld, we also help them provide health insurance and financial benefits that are really crucial to attracting and retaining good talent. And so, that's what happens on a kind of day-to-day basis. But even beyond that, during the pandemic, we've stepped up as a partner and helped facilitate almost $4.5 billion in PPP loans. And we're sort of knee-deep in forgiveness. This past year has been particularly painful for small businesses, but one bright spot has been a record year of entrepreneurship. 4.3 million new businesses have been created in 2020, which was the highest year on record. And so, we have these top line numbers from the census and from some other data sources, but at Gusto, we really wanted to dig in and to see, who are these entrepreneurs? Why did they start a business? What kind of businesses are they starting? So we decided to survey new business owners on Gusto's platform to kind of get a sense of that, to get a picture beyond these top line numbers. And, there are some really surprising findings in this survey. First of all, this new entrepreneurship, this boom in new business creation is being driven by entrepreneurs of color. We've seen huge increases in the percentage of new business creators who are Black and Hispanic and Asian American. All of these people who have been hit hardest by the pandemic turned obstacles into opportunities. But we've also seen that they're struggling. And just like 2020 was a record year for business creation, 2021 or 2022 could be record years for business closure without some of the support that we've been advocating for.
So when you talk support, can you go into detail of that? Because, when people, like you said, small businesses really are struggling, and then some people can turn the obstacle into opportunity. So how do you guys help those small businesses specifically when you say support?
Sure. So, first of all, what we do a lot, and what I do as an economist at Gusto, is use our data to highlight these pain points and to advocate for policies that help these small business owners. First of all, anybody who started a business after February of 2020 is not eligible for Paycheck Protection Program loans. And there are tons of stories of small business owners who, in January 2020, signed a lease and opened their doors and started adding people to payroll in February, just as a pandemic hit, which is terrible timing. And it shouldn't be held against them that, just at this time, February 15th, 2020, is the threshold for having payroll to be eligible for PPP. So anybody just around that time isn't eligible. So we've been advocating a lot to get support for these businesses that just had bad luck and bad timing. But also, state and local policies have a role to play. We've talked to a business owner whose story I think is particularly powerful. Her name's Ashley Walker. She started a smoothie place. It's called Smoothie Me Please in Riviera Beach, Florida, which is a food desert. Less than 30% of people have access to affordable, healthy food. So like so many small business owners, she's stepping in to fill a community need. But she started in January of 2020, and so many things were delayed and put off because of the pandemic that she received a or she was able to receive a community development loan from the city of Riviera Beach to both redevelop an empty building and to subsidize rent for her lease for 3 years, which really provides this foundation. And that's what I mean by support, that starting a business, filling this community need is so risky that when governments from the federal level on down can provide certainty to these entrepreneurs, it can allow them the confidence to grow and expand and, provide for their communities.
And Luke, as you know, as an economist, that a high percentage of new businesses fail in the first year without the pandemic, without the nuances, right? And so whenever we have the most new businesses that open, I would assume in the next year we would have the most new businesses closing, just from historical statistics. But one thing that Gusto does beyond the payroll and the benefit side is they really help scale a business. And I think one of the reasons that so many new businesses close is they actually can't handle their success. I work with so many different entrepreneurs, small, medium-sized business, of course, funded by the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. They're gracious billionaires that have allowed me to do this either for free or for a little bit. But I really have, created a niche to understand the growth and the needs of a business when it grows. And a lot of times, I think a lot of people think of business as a failure because it doesn't have business, especially with the world scope and scale and size of distribution that we have in e-commerce, that people aren't prepared to handle the business that they have. I know Gusto helps on both ends when there needs to be supplemental support, but also to help give them the situational knowledge to go from a small to a medium and a medium to a large business.
Sure. Yeah. What we say is we help people grow with Gusto, that you can start as a small business and scale up.
Or you grow with Gusto.
So depending on where you're from. Portugal, you can grow with
I know Diamond likes that. Mucho gusto, Diamond. Mucho gusto.
I would say gusto.
But back to your one point about this new business creation and the failure rates, we asked these entrepreneurs about their optimism, how likely they would be to survive 6 months or to survive 12 months without additional support. And we found, in a normal year, like you were saying, about 1 in 5 small businesses fail. But according to our survey, we could see almost 1 in 2 new businesses fail, 50%. And that rate would be higher for Black entrepreneurs who are around 63% said they couldn't last a year. And one really important aspect is the fact that these business failures are particularly costly, that bankruptcies and closing a business is costly. And, we think of new businesses being formed by entrepreneurs of color as being really important and an inspiring trend. But if they don't survive and grow, then we could see the racial wealth gap and the racial income gaps exacerbated by this apparently inspiring trend. But like you were saying, at Gusto, we help businesses grow and survive. Even the day-to-day things like when you hire employees across state lines, managing multiple payroll taxes, or just growing and managing benefits is stuff that we, is sort of our bread and butter, and we help entrepreneurs grow with Gusto.
I really love how you educate people, and I think it's very important because a lot of people, like Dave says, even their success, they fail because they're not educated in how to keep growing. When you're there was a lot of people that didn't get these loans and didn't know how to apply for these loans. They were just in the dark, and then you saw all these big chains get the loans and the small businesses got crushed. What strategies do you use? Because I know it's very hard when people are just stuck and they won't listen. And as an economist and a smart guy, look, you need to pivot. So what kind of techniques do you use with people to teach them to pivot and step back and not take things personal when they're not working and come up with new strategies?
Sure. I think one thing that we've been looking at Gusto or doing at Gusto is just making sure that the information is out there, what an economist would call a kind of nudge, that, a lot of people were left out of PPP because they didn't know about it or they didn't know how to access it. But at Gusto, we have great access to payroll data. So we provided their application data to create a loan, and we partnered with many fintech banks to facilitate these loans. And so, just when that information isn't there, stepping in and providing it in a way that isn't, forceful or judgmental. They're not feeling pressured, but just knowing that if it's because of certain informational constraints, well, we're here. We've created this forgiveness report. We're going to make the process as easy as possible for you to take advantage of.
Brilliant.
And your education was and you had studied the effects of our governmental programs and policies on disadvantaged populations, housing and labor in particular. What have you carried over into Gusto to help support what the government did well, but also
Mhm.
to improve upon some of the things that you learned while you were studying that?
Yeah, I think what's really important coming out of my education was understanding what we call in economics, I'll use a term here called general equilibrium effects, which is, not only first order effects, but also second and third order, that a policy meant to encourage a certain outcome can actually backfire in the long term because of unforeseen circumstances. So, for example, one thing that I've looked at a lot is some of the effects of housing vouchers, which are incredibly powerful in making rent affordable, but in some cities can actually make it a little more expensive. And so I've tried to carry that over to Gusto, where we think about new business creation and entrepreneurship and government policies that ostensibly try to encourage these outcomes. And we see these encouraging first trends might in effect counteract themselves or backfire if, for instance, we don't provide long-term support or these businesses can't grow and survive, but instead are forced to close.
Amazing.
Man, I think I love the service you're providing. It's so good, and so many people need it, and you're helping so many people. It's just really fantastic. So it's just awesome, Luke.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Luke. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing on my end that I love is talking to these new business owners or any business owner on Gusto, because I'm in the process of completing my PhD. I've sort of spent my last 5 years in books in the library, but actually hearing the experiences of these small business owners, it adds to my value as an economist as well.
And Luke, what have you seen as far as with the more disadvantaged entrepreneurs, the minority entrepreneurs, that we have to create inclusive, equal opportunity? And I think the democratization of commerce through e-commerce has really helped with drop shipping and the supply chain being so simple to enter and to manage. Where have you seen the transition from this more developmental smoothie restaurant that is needed comparatively to a lot of small businesses are strictly online, and there's some great ones that can reach the entire world, which I believe will have a greater impact on the disadvantaged communities, because a lot of times what happens when you have the brick and mortar stores and you start expanding, they expand outside of their own community, and when the e-commerce side, all they're doing is driving wealth to the community where they live, and they're spending their money in their community. So where have you seen that trend, the e-commerce trend, take hold, and how will it benefit the disadvantaged?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a little tricky because a lot of these changes are taking place over the long term, and there can be some frictions involved. So one thing we've been looking at Gusto actually is the geography of this economic recovery, where we've seen so much growth out in the suburbs and smaller cities, and urban areas, like the downtowns of big cities are still suffering from the pandemic and people sort of emptying out of these cities. And
I have to interrupt here, because if it makes anybody feel any better, I travel all over safely, vaccinated, with masks. But I will tell you, the most depressing street in the country that I've been on is Fifth Avenue in New York.
Oh, really?
By far the most depressing. Oh my God, there's so much vacant space.
Wow.
So all of those brands got killed because Fifth Avenue is desolate. It's awful. From the big restaurants to the high end stuff is just, they couldn't afford their leases. But go ahead, let's talk about the disadvantage, not about Gucci and Tiffany.
No, but I'm sure they'll be fine. But the small businesses in these areas might not be, but the shift to e-commerce has allowed them to level the playing field and to ship their business or their goods. We've talked to this cake company in San Francisco that was it's a bakery that was started in San Francisco, but has sort of shifted to e-commerce and is able to deliver their products out because of this growth in e-commerce and technology firms catering to them.
Yeah, and Mike's business as well has really transitioned from when I met him with the Diamond Life Fuel and being able to use e-commerce and the stretch and the branding that's capable. Any last piece of advice, who should be reaching out to Gusto? Any secrets that, or things to be aware of right now as a smaller mid-sized business, that some gems that we can pass on before I let you go?
Well, first of all are welcome to join Gusto, and all should join Gusto, because we make it super easy to both run payroll and then take advantage of all of these services like healthcare benefits and financial benefits. One thing that I'll leave with is that we are always fighting and advocating for small businesses. There's this huge infrastructure bill, and we made sure that there's some good stuff in there for small businesses. So I would just keep an eye out for all of these great things happening on the horizon.
No doubt, and we appreciate you coming on. I say Gusto, but it's Gusto, gusto.com. The great Luke Pardue. Thank you so much. Everybody check it out. It's absolutely a must or a gust have. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Great to meet you, David.
Mucho gusto. All right, take care. That's awesome.
I would have said Gusto for sure.
I like it, man. I actually thought it was Gusto, and I'm like, let's go with the Gusto. Mucho gusto. Anyway, there's so many great resources sometimes, and people before they feel as if they're alone in a struggle, a situation, like I always say, the easiest way to get to where you want to be is find someone in the situation that you want to be in and ask them for directions. It is a GPS for small and mid-sized business to get you that direction on where to go. All right, as we wait for our next guest, my friend, we got a tight time frame. Would love to, go through with you in your small business. What's been your greatest challenge, Mike, with Light Fuel that you found during the pandemic, and what did you do to propel yourself to a better place, a better situation?
The hardest thing is, because I do everything myself, is making sure you get your product and I can keep up with what you need. So, I think what people fall through the cracks is, and I learned this years ago before the internet, is I need to contact you personally and make sure that you're happy. And I think people like Andy Frisella did it so well when he first started business, and he talks about it and people don't get it. I have to take full responsibility and accountability for my product and how you feel when you take it. So if I send out 100 samples, I physically write down the people I've sent the samples to, and I check up with them and say, did you like it? What did you like about it? And make sure I own those first 1,000 customers. So it's the responsibility that people don't want to take. And I've really had to it's been hard, but it's worth it, because then when someone texts me and says, man, I feel great every morning taking your stuff, I'm like, that person's going to get me the next 1,000 people. So I think taking the responsibility to say, hey, it's on me. If I'm going to make this, it's all on me.
Yeah, I know. And, I'm on it right now. So Wednesday is my Diamond Fuel Day. Besides Diamond Life Fuel itself, I'm all Mikey Diamond, a dose of diamond. I call it dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins flowing through me with the great taste that you have. One of the things as you grow, is I took the same approach of what I call managing and developing a vision, creating a go, no go plan so that I'm selling through people, not to people. And you're one of the better people that I know in the world that sell through people, creating that relationship. And it's the least expensive way to scale a business is when you're getting free salespeople because they just love your product and you've sold through them and they just want to help people and tell them how great it is. As I'm trying to do by even, our first show, and I'm wearing hundreds of these things, and now a TV show on Bloomberg and Amazon. And I think to myself, I was just trying to, I loved Diamond's business. I loved his product and I just wanted to help him and thought, it would be fun to hang out every Wednesday to help people during COVID. And you do the right thing and things evolve, which is amazing, right? And your gratitude.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's ridiculousness. All right. So I'm going to cheat the system a little bit, and we'll go with a takeaway for the week. It's More Good News Wednesday. We haven't seen each other since last Wednesday. Since we've only had one guest, either give me your biggest takeaway from Luke at the Gusto or your biggest takeaway of the week.
You know what I liked about Gusto is I really love how and I think it's to educate people. People need education and people need help. And I found it really amazing that he is willing to do that work of educating people, teaching them about loans. So I feel it's my job always, if someone is stuck, to take the time to educate them.
Yeah, I haven't seen an example of being more interested than interesting in a long time. When you're talking about 4.3 million new businesses that were, built, and you think about what it's like, and I can't tell you all the businesses that I've built, that I'm involved with as an advisor, business board member, whatever it is, so many times I changed the trajectory of an entire business, small, medium, or large, simply because somebody asked me, "Hey, Dave, did you ever have this happen, or do you know anyone that can help me?" And people would say, "Oh my God, I didn't know I could get a PPP loan. Oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a development. I didn't know I could buy a property from the court steps. I didn't know how to do that." And I didn't know. I mean, even when PPP came out, I found a aggregator, a broker, right? Because what was happening was the banks that were approved, and this is for small businesses, they were only helping the big clients, right? Because they were so far behind. Remember, Professor Orange was extremely slow in getting the money out to people, and then I found a broker that would shop the deals to, and PayPal ended up being a great source for small businesses where nobody had an in, where you go to Wells Fargo and they're dealing with their private lending group is making sure that all their people are taken care of, and meanwhile PayPal's out there just feeding people, and did such an extraordinary job, by the way, of helping save so many businesses by giving this supplement. And I will tell you that I know so many businesses here in America that America invested in by giving them supplemental support that have never done better. They went from literally would have been bankrupt to 190 stores during the last 8. I mean, and these are clients of mine that I mentor, that I'm just so proud to be an American and to see the success that all these people have had from that supplemental help. So being more interested than interesting. All right, let's bring Steve on. He's joined us now. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us. I had to have Steve on because he, for whatever reason, I've attracted all my favorite, founders of LinkedIn. In other words, the first chief HR officer. Now he's the talent strategist for Cadigan Talent Ventures. But I mean, talk about a role. Kwame's a good friend of mine. Eric Lee's a good friend of mine. Now I get Steve on here. I got the whole host of people who created, something much bigger than I think they even imagined. But obviously, talent is probably one of the most crucial things, especially today. Attracting the right talent, maintaining and keeping the right talent, especially with the way that the work quake, as you stated, has kind of come out, and you've just published your first book, Work Quake. Give me an idea of what caused the work. Well, first, define the work quake, and then tell me what caused the work quake.
Yeah, well, I started writing this book a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and I finished it. Pandemic hits. I'm like, holy crap, maybe everything about the future work that I've been writing has no relevance. And fortunately, after a few sleepless nights, I woke up and said, you know what? I think it's all relevant. And the book was born out of my fatigue of hearing all the endless media gloom and doom stories, run for the hills, your job is toast, the robots are coming, artificial intelligence, AI, automation is going to take over. You have no hope. Every skill that you're going to need to unlearn and then relearn new skills. And it seemed to be just this endless defeatist stream of hopelessness in the media. And so I wanted to come up with a different, more optimistic, more satisfying model for the future work for both employers and employees. And so that's what I strove to do with this book. And I found many organizations and many people, and I pulled stories from my background to try to find something more inspirational and more honest around this future work, rather than, well, let's say, for example, this whole notion you mentioned about retention, okay? Every company wants great people and they want to keep great people. But what they really want is to thrive. And I think what we're seeing in the world of work is more turnover, more people changing jobs faster than ever before. And nobody I speak to in any part of the world thinks that's going to change. Okay. So when I also look at the foundation of work today, particularly in technology companies, Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Groupon, Snap, Airbnb, Oracle, Microsoft, their median tenure is 2 years.
Wow.
And when I was at LinkedIn, we grew from 400 to 4,000. The tenure was 9 months every year. And we created $26 billion of value. So it made me think, maybe we've overvalued tenure, long tenure, and maybe we've undervalued new people with new ideas and new energy. And maybe that's the future work we should think about.
Wow.
Drop Mike.
Yeah. Well, Mike's not going to talk. I will. He's in shock there. But for me, the biggest critical issue, and it wasn't AI. I'm a technology person like you. We shared the Silicon Valley early on. I was in the middleware space and then CEO at Samsung's phone division with the first smartphone. But it wasn't technology. It was engagement because of technology. When you brought up this point about faster turnover and the benefits of it, is that because of the attention deficit and the stimuli that's necessary in order to keep people engaged, it makes sense that we're going to continue to have a high rate of turnover. And it is almost a refreshment of engagement where, as I see, it's very difficult historically, whether you work for GM or GE or whoever in our country, to stay engaged for 40 years. That, there may be periods of time, but most people, the percentages are just ridiculous of how disengaged they are, and the longer they're there, the more disengaged they become. And this is true in small and medium-sized businesses as well. So it's really interesting. What have you seen in the engagement side? Because regardless if someone has skills, knowledge, if they're engaged, if the average employee is engaged, let's say 17% of the day, if you can get fresh talent in there engaged 50% of the day, they can be 1/3 as talented and get the same productivity.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating studies I've seen during the pandemic is that people who are working from home are more engaged with their companies, but they're less in the company. They're not at the company, but they're more engaged. And to me, maybe that's worth more exploration. Like, I'm not buying that data on face value. So what's going on? Well, maybe I have more freedom and control of my time. Maybe I have more comfort level without feeling the breath of my boss on the back of my neck. And I'm proving that I can deliver and be productive without having to sit within the boundaries that we considered work. And so that one thing around relative to engagement is super interesting to me. But the other thing, David, I've been studying engagement since Gallup published this in the year 2000, first year we've ever saw their data. And we have sort of peaked out in the United States at 30%. Like on one level, it's like, that's a tragedy. Like our people should be running for the hill. Like, oh my gosh, house on fire. It's like, oh yeah, 30%, pretty good number. Like what? And so it's made me started to say, and I don't explicitly tackle this in WorkQuake, but it makes me ask the question, is that really something that's worth measuring? If it's coming out of 30%, we're just kind of going about our daily routines the way we were before we had that data. Maybe we should be talking about trust. Maybe we should talk about the dimensions of engagement. Maybe it's something deeper, because companies aren't promising long-term employment anymore. And they can't promise business won't get disrupted in the future. They can't promise, particularly in technology, can't promise that there isn't going to be a new player that's going to force us to have to do a staff adjustment. But what we can promise and what's more meaningful, I think, and this is why I say, we got to stop thinking about employees in terms of only caring about them when they work for us. It's a big part of WorkQuake, which is, and I was on a panel today, this conference around the future of learning, because the future of work really is about the future of learning. If you want to be vital tomorrow, your company's got to be able to pivot and grow and learn new skills. And I'm like, why do we keep only thinking about developing our people when they work for us? Why don't we care about them for the entirety of their career? Why don't we say, in a world where more and more people are leaving, we have more alumni, more people that used to work for us. Why don't we curate that and nurture it? And most of the listeners, I would bet, are scarcely more than 10% are going to say, oh yeah, my former employees are always checking in on me saying, hey, we got a new product. Can you give us some feedback? Do you know anyone that would be a good fit for this role? We know you've moved on to something different. It's more the Tony Soprano school of HR, which is, what, you quit? You're dead to me. And we got to change that narrative. We got to change the narrative.
I love that. So Steve, do you think then, when you're talking about engagement, right? So people need to buy in, right? People need to believe that you're going to take care of them. And there's got to be some kind of emotional intelligence from the leader, right? That says, okay, if you work for me and I'm a really good leader, like you said, you're going to get benefits way beyond after you leave me. So it's building that network with people that, like, if, I work for Dave Meltzer and Dave Meltzer's awesome. I know I can always call Dave Meltzer and he's going to hook me up. And I think what you're talking about is those leaders need to take that thing and say, I'm a leader. And if you work with me, you could be done in a month. It doesn't matter. If you bring me value and I think you're working on your skills and you've got a growth mindset, you can always call me and I'll place you in the right position. So do you think it falls back on the leaders not being good leaders in that sense?
Well, listen, I got to tell you, and I'm sort of drafting off of a woman who wrote a book about this years ago, named Judy Estrin. She was a CTO of Cisco when I was there. We acquired her company, just a brilliant mind. And when I was interviewing at LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman pulled her book off the shelf and says, "Have you read this book from Judy?" I said, "No, should I?" And her whole premise of her book, I forget the name of the book, but it was a quick read. She basically said, in technology, and I would say writ large, and I'll ask you a question in a second, to prove my point. What companies are doing is they're building for a short-term exit. They're building for 8 to 15 years, cash in, get acquired, have an exit. And with that kind of mentality, it doesn't breed investing in leadership, because we're really investing in an outcome of an exit. And so I believe there's a huge leadership deficit. I was coaching someone in a technology company recently, and they said, "Well, my boss doesn't know anything. She's not having," and I said, "Why are you expecting that?" Well, leaders are not getting invested in, as much as they used to be. And so to try to prove my point here, what company, when you think of the United States, is producing the best business leaders today? Crickets. Yeah, and that's it. I couldn't answer that question either.
Meltzer Enterprises.
Yeah. Other than Meltzer Enterprises, okay.
I was gonna.
But what company? And the first thing that people say, "Oh, well, Google." I said, "Well, tell me some Google alumni who are crushing it right now." And you ask any venture firm who bought the Google Halo to invest in some ex-Googlers and lost their shirt. No, it's not necessarily producing. They're producing really interesting, innovative ideas. But that gets to my bigger point, which is we're not investing in leadership. And I'm not throwing the blame on anyone. I'm saying companies are, especially in the pandemic, they're trying to survive right now. And that means jewelry gets thrown overboard. We got to navigate this uncertain, ridiculous, unexpected reality. There's no MBA in remote hybrid leadership out there. We're all trying to figure this out right now. And so, what I'm trying to tell organizations, listen, don't focus on a false promise that, stay here a long time and commit to me and I'll commit to keep your job a long time. Just say, while you're here, and Mike, you phrase this along the lines of what I think is the right way to think about this is, listen, as long as you're here, I'm going to invest as much in you as I can. You invest as much as me as you can, and then we'll be connected for the rest of your career. And I've got your back, and that's all we can, that's more realistic than this pretend, oh yeah, you need to stay here a long time and we're going to promise you. Neither party can make that promise.
Steve, and I'm bummed we have to let you go because I want to have you back onto another show because it's just such great data in the conversation. But I think to sum up, your next book should be a lesson that I learned from Lee Steinberg, who was a great mentor and a great leader to me, running Lee Steinberg Sports and Entertainment, probably the most notable sports agency. He always said, Dave, when you are dealing with employees, with our partners, associates, clients, just be kind to your future self. And I think, as a golden rule, you could really talk to that of how we are or are supposed to be kind to our future selves, how we can recruit like Duke, as you say, because, I know Coach Krzyzewski well, he's kind to his future self all the way. And if you talk about building future leaders, go ahead and look at the graduates from Duke and Duke basketball. They're building great leaders by being kind to their future self, elevating others to elevate themselves. And most great leaders are intelligent followers. And thank you for being such an intelligent follower and helping all of us. Steve, come back and visit us again. SteveCadigan.com. Check him out. He is the talent strategist now for Cadigan Talent Ventures. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Bye.
All right. It's a work quake, and my man is the volcano there. I'm stumping Mike today. We're getting stumped. I thought for sure you're going to say Dave Meltzer Enterprises. I thought he sent you that softball.
I gave you saying how you're such a great leader and boss. But if
yeah,
I just throw in,
you got me that. We got that much. I am the original
all I do is
transparent suck ass. Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, then it's like living in your pocket.
Living in your pocket like Stuart Little. All right, perfect. All right, let's have some fun. I'm just a couple minutes behind. but it was well worth it. We're going to unmute Jonathan there. Make sure you're unmuted. We have our friend Jonathan Greachin. He is the co-founder of the Founder Institute, pitchforprogress.com. Could there be anybody better to help us as well here? You're talking about progress in the global competition, Pitch for Progress. That's better than 2-minute drill. Hey, Jonathan, welcome to Office Hours. Are you on mute? Yeah, I thought sorry, Matt. I'm trying my best.
I am muted. That was my bad. I just want to say real
first time
quick.
On Zoom? First time on Zoom?
Yeah, first time.
Me too.
I also just want to say a lot of this Duke talk. I'm a Villanova alum, so
yeah, Nova.
So go Wildcats. Thanks for having me, David. It was a really interesting conversation you guys just had, and honestly, a lot of the stuff that we're doing is kind of in a similar realm. I think what Steve was talking about was, just having the mission is important, right? And having people on your team that care about what you're doing and building a great culture as a team, and kind of what we're doing at Founder Institute is to help people that are building new businesses kind of have that same attitude, because that mission matters not only to people that you may recruit to your team, but also potential customers, partners, investors, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been there. You have over $1 billion in venture funding. I think the largest Founder Institute is the world's largest pre-seed startup accelerator. You guys have been around for 12, 13 years, if I remember correctly. But what has been, 4,000 companies later, the common denominator that you've seen through the accelerator by helping all these companies? What's that common denominator of success?
So we actually take a social science view of this, right? Where every single person that's coming into the Founder Institute program, they're usually just, they may even be a full-time employee at another company, right? They usually come to FI when they are starting their first business. So we test them, and we've been working with social scientists now for the last 12 plus years. And we try to quantify and find the traits that make successful early stage entrepreneurs. So as you probably could guess, IQ, for example, doesn't really matter for entrepreneurship, right? You don't, IQ is that's raw computing power. But one trait that we do look for that we see to correlate very, very strongly with being a good early stage entrepreneur is something known as it's fluid intelligence. And that is essentially, in layman's terms, it's your ability to learn super, super quickly. So the way that we test that, literally, you could take this test, we show you a series of puzzles, and we're like, okay, this is a pattern. And then we show you all these other problems after that. And we're like, okay, according to the rules from that pattern, solve number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, right? That level, that kind of intelligence, that fluid intelligence, the ability to learn quickly, to adjust to the uneven playing field of entrepreneurship, all those kinds of things are super important. And the other trait that we look for as well is what's known as openness, and that kind of lends itself to creativity, risk-taking, and those kinds of things. So that's our admissions process that we use to get into the program. And then once you're in, once we kind of quantify those raw traits, those raw materials that we have found to correlate positively with entrepreneurship, then we put you through a structured process to actually get there and to build a business that matters.
Sounds nice. Like my sales qualification process. I do open mind, open heart, and open hands. And but I love fluid intelligence. I invested in a company that has adaptable intelligence, and I wonder if they're utilizing some sort of fluid intelligence test in order to effectuate whether you have an adaptable intelligence, which I think, as EQ was really hot the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I think your fluid intelligence and adaptable intelligence will be at the forefront of what we are looking for when we're betting on the jockey on these, in the accelerator stage or pre-seed funding stage. Go ahead, Mikey. Sorry about that.
No, don't be silly. Do you think that people can be made entrepreneurs, or there has to be an innate ability for someone to it's in their DNA?
That's the golden question right there, Mike, right? So the short answer is that I don't think entrepreneurship can be taught, okay? My company is called Founder Institute, but we are not an educational institution. When you come into Founder Institute, we put you through a process, because I think entrepreneurship is something that you can only learn. All right. And I apologize in advance if there are any PhDs in entrepreneurship that are watching this. I apologize, but I think that might have been a waste of your money and time.
Yeah,
You know,
you're better off just getting your ass kicked for 10 years, and that's much better than getting a PhD.
Yeah, I think we're in like-minded here, where there are raw materials that are important, but at the end of the day, you could do all the studying and read as many books as possible. Every single scenario is different. And if that wasn't the case, then the best VCs in the world wouldn't have a 90% failure rate. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. We really don't know. We have best practices to figure out, you know, to kind of figure out those consumer trends, but it's a constantly moving playing field. And I think one of the best values for any entrepreneur is it's a phrase we use a lot. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
And you got to figure that out. So there's a process to figure that out. You can't learn it in a book, because it's literally changing from yesterday to today. And it's literally different from whatever type of product you're building, or customer, or whatever.
No, I like that, because like even you're saying you're setting a test up a certain way to see if people can get in that intelligent flow. Do you know what I'm saying? And a lot of people now think, well, I'm going to go and study entrepreneurship, but they don't really have it's not in them to just have that thing of just sitting in it, face adversity, turn obstacles into opportunities, and grit it out. They just think, it's cool now. I'm going to be an entrepreneur like Dave Meltzer.
If you can't have somebody tell you to your face that your idea is the dumbest thing they've ever heard, and then keep plowing through that, it's something that we do with a lot of our entrepreneurs, right? A lot of people try to raise funding, and we have a test. We're like, okay, if you have to it's like a video game, right? It's like, get to 100 no's. You have to pitch 100 investors and get them to say no to you. Awesome. And you know what? If you are adaptable and you could figure out the learning, that is going to get you so much closer to being successful, because number one, you're learning, and number two, you actually just have that raw skill of being, you know, resilient.
Yeah. And Jonathan, that's what I want to ask you, as we finish up, is that, you know, for me, I'm blessed to be around billionaires, millionaires, entrepreneurs, celebrities, athletes, entertainers at the highest level worldwide. And the common denominator is always a desire that they must be what they can be. And that encompasses consistent, persistent resilience, the ability to enjoy it. You know, and you've had these people in your accelerator, when you tell them to go out and get 20 no's or 100 no's, whatever it may be, they enjoy it. And I'm a sicko that, you know, I'll actually call it the 25 no rule, right? Like, every time I get a no, I know I'm just that much closer to a yes, and I get more excited than thinking I'm farther away or someone's hurt my feelings. Have you learned at the Founders Institute, because I think it's one of the most valuable things to be able to witness or be aware of, the differentiator, that one that, you know, you can see a sales guy, you know, charisma, you can figure out this fluid intelligence and adaptability and emotional intelligence. You can figure all that out. But there is no way that I have found that I can meet somebody, even if they've told me stories that they've survived, you know, like a Brian Bogart of the world that's been crushed between cars. I'm not so sure that even that guy, I could tell whether they have this desire that they must be what they can be. What do you look for that magic that makes a true success?
So I'll put it in the way of, as I was describing before, in the social sciences, right? So obviously, as you said, it's the persistence, the ability to take those no's until you get to the yes, because that literally is just the ability to learn and not take it personally. So incredibly important. It's not even funny, right? The ability to have an open mind. This goes to the social sciences. It's called the Big Five personality trait. It's called openness. And that is the ability to just be risk-taking and to be open to new ideas, right? But I think once you kind of quantify those two things, like, that's sort of I would call that kind of the entrance of admission, right? Like, that gets you in the door. After that, what we look for is the perfect combination, and this, again, to the agreeableness, it's a trait called agreeableness. So if you looked at this personality trait, a person that has zero agreeableness is literally, can I curse on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right, good. That is somebody that is
only you and my wife can.
Okay, complete unsufferable asshole, right? Zero agreeableness. Like, literally, you couldn't even say, no, I like this soda better than this one. They're going to argue about that. 100 on the other side of the scale is a 100% total pushover, right? So what we look for, it's somewhere between, you look at that as the 35 to about that 65 scale of the people right in the middle of that agreeableness. And the reason why I bring that up, and I know I'm getting a little bit kind of data driven, but that's what we do as entrepreneurs, right? It's if you have that ability to be really fast learning, right, which is fluid intelligence, if you have that ability to have an open mind and not like hold your beliefs so close to your heart and be so emotional about it, which is openness. And if you combine those things with the ability to have moderate agreeableness, where you're not a complete asshole and you're not a complete pushover, and you're able to push when you need to and have that flexibility, like that is the perfect place. And that's our admissions process at Founder Institute, and that's what we found to be the best one. So I understand that's maybe not actionable advice, but that's what we look for. Don't be a dick, basically.
Yeah, that's my next book. Don't do business with dicks. And I will tell you something that I found actionable that falls in the context of what you're describing. I call it the process of trusting and vetting. Those people that know how to trust and vet, which is a great combination. Anyway, we got to jump. I'm on a tight time frame because I got a dentist appointment. As you know, I am real about it. That's right. Not bad. Anyway, Jonathan, thank you so much. Pitchforprogress.com. Everybody enter. What a great company Founder Institute is. Check out Jonathan Greachin. He is here to be of service and of value and empowering over 4,000 companies, funding over $1 billion, which is incredible in venture funding over the years. Thank you so much. We'll have you back on, my friend. Incredible conversation. Thank you.
Go Nova.
Go Nova. They've won a championship a lot sooner than Duke has. All right, perfect. Here we go. All right, Mikey, I got a baby tooth that fell out, so I got to figure that out. No pain, no gain. Mikey Diamond, Diamond Life Fuel. We'll see you later. Remember, everyone, we did the takeaway of the day. Don't take for granted what other people are wishing for. Be kind to your future self is my takeaway and always my tagline. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, team. Take care.